Hello chess fans, today I'm going to go over the game I had against Aman, and at the end I'll go over against the tiny bit of drama I had in a clip. So the game started off with e4, c5, knight c3, e6, and I decided to go for knight g2. So this is sort of some hyper flexible modern way to play, and the idea is basically you want to see what black commits to till you decide your setup. For example, if they go for a6, you can go for a closed Sicilian, and maybe this is slightly better than if they went for like a g6 setup against a closed Sicilian. We know this is sort of the refutation of it because they're not controlling the d4 square. Or if they go for something like knight c6, g3, and d5, which is the way you punish this move order. Now the old line went with takes, bishop g2, d4, knight d5, and this has been played by Bobby Fischer, but this is just slightly worse for white, I would say. So instead of that, I went for d4. And the idea of d4 is that we're basically fixing this pawn on d5, so after bishop g2, it's going to be a permanent weakness. So now there's a problem with this, and the problem is bishop g4. And the idea is now that you have no way to defend this, and okay, if you take here, d4 just wins a piece, because you're going to have to move this, or okay, so if you take here, yeah, d4 just wins a piece, because after knight a4, they have here, and if here they have queen e7, and they're going to pick this up too. Or they even have bishop c5 and takes, and basically they're just winning here. Okay, so we don't want to allow that, and they're going to be up on development. So instead of that, I went for bishop g2. And bishop g2 is a really hyper modern move, and it was written about in a book. And now basically the only move here is to go knight takes d5. And the idea is that, okay, the knight's no longer defending it, so why can't I just take with the knight? And notice we can't take here with our knight because then we'd lose this. So example, after knight takes here, if we take here, we lose this. And basically we can't do much else. And so now the old move here was to castle, and then after knight takes, something like knight takes, this position is probably about equal. For example, after castles, something like knight takes, queen d7, it's probably about equal. Black has this extra pawn, but they're going to lose it. For example, something like after h3, this is what the engine says is the line. Yeah, I don't know the line, but this is just a line. And yeah, white has some activity here for the pawn. So that was the old line. But here, I think this position has kind of been refuted by theory by this move h3. Excuse me. Now, if they take here, for example, after something like takes, there's actually no good way to defend this pawn. For example, after knight e7, c4, if they take here, they lose this, and then I have this bishop c6 check. So, for example, takes something like this would just be game over. And so after c4, they're going to have to play g6 and sacrifice the pawn, and this position is completely winning. So they can't do that. So after move h3, they would have to go in some long theoretical line, which I'm not going to go into. You can look at it if you want. So instead of that, my opponent took with the pawn, which I think is a lot more practical of a decision, but a decision that leaves black in a much worse position. So here I took with the knight, and yeah, that's pretty much the only move. My opponent went knight f6, and I went for bishop g5. And here I was expecting my opponent to go for bishop e7, and I thought that after just takes, something like queen takes, and I go for this move h3 because I don't want to castle yet because then he would win a piece. He has to go like here, and then after g4, something like this. This just looked winning to me. Not winning, but I looked a lot better here, so I thought that I was doing well here, but I didn't calculate queen a5 whatsoever. So at this point, I was completely out of theory. And what happens when you're completely out of theory and you're against a GM? You start seeing a lot of ghosts. And so here, one thing I would like to say is that I haven't played over the board chess in like 2.5 years at this point. So my mind is still in like blitz mode. The second you get out of theory, you just think, how can I play like a move that looks reasonable as quick as possible? And here, okay, the obvious move is I go back to d2, right? And my opponent can't go knight b4 because I just double his pawns and then win the knight. He can't go bishop b4 because then I just win the knight again. So what does he do? He has to go back to d8, and then after bishop g5, I can repeat. And is this a good result for me? Yes, because I'm against a GM. Now, would I do this against a lower rated player? Of course not. Here, after something like queen a5, I'd have to look for something after bishop d2, queen d8, and play the move h3. Would I find this? I would think probably against a lower rated player. Against a higher rated player, like I was against a GM, I think probably I would find this as well. But instead of that, I started seeing ghosts. After bishop d2, I was so worried about this move queen takes d5. And after bishop takes d5, knight takes d5, I know a lot of players in chess would not consider this sacrifice at all. But after something like castles, and here I was afraid of bishop f3, it just looked so bad to me. Now the engine is giving +5 here and saying that black does have compensation after bishop c5, being the position is only +2.5. But like I can't believe that is that good for black. I was terrified of that sacrifice, and my opponent was definitely not going to go for that. My opponent later stated in their analysis of the game and like after the game that they were just going to go for the draw here, and it's not a bad result if you get trapped in your opponent's theory to get away with a draw. So yeah, I could have had like a quick 8-10 move draw, and this would have been the best tournament of my life, but instead I decided to play queen d2. And queen d2 comes with a very big miscalculation. So I calculated a line, and I thought that I was okay after it. So for example, after takes, yeah, my opponent really criticized queen d2, which was right. Queen d2 was a bad move. Yeah, so here my opponent played castles. So now the only line I calculated that after rook d8, I had this move h3. And the idea is that after bishop takes a2, I have takes here with check. Important detail. Now I completely missed castles, and that's because originally I thought, okay, I could just take this pawn here. And again, I should have taken way more time, because at this point I was up 40 minutes because my opponent didn't know the situation on the clock. But then here, I think after the simple rook d7, I'm just completely lost. If I go back, my opponent can go for knight e5 with tempo, threatening knight f3. And for example, like if I move the bishop, this would be a terrible way to lose the game. So yeah, I would just be dead lost here. And after I saw that, I was like, oh, dang, I completely missed castles. So here I had to hunker up. And yeah, if I had seen castles all the way back here, I would not clearly have played queen d2. But yeah, not even a hard move to find, just 2 moves later. And yeah, just thought I could take here, but I completely missed this knight f3 idea to jump into these squares. Not to mention my opponent would have d3 in some positions. So instead here I played f3. And okay, at this point I'm worse, but it's not terrible. And my opponent played bishop f5, which is what I expected. So here I took. Now, if I go back, I think that there's just problems with knight e5. And yeah, I just don't see how I defend myself. The engine claims that after castles takes here. Yeah, very unnatural. So I'm not even going to contend with that. Bishop takes e6 is a natural move. And I think that's what my opponent expected too. So here I castled. My opponent played c5, looking to use their majority, which was a good move here. I played knight h4. h5, they're looking for sort of h4 moves in the future. And now here I played rook d1, and after bishop d6, I calculated this knight takes h5 move for a while, and then after rook takes h5 you have here. But then after the move rook takes h2, bishop takes h2 here, apparently this position is very good for black. Now, I didn't see that in the game here. I thought I was just equal. But the reason I didn't go for this is because I thought that he had this other move, rook h3. And after g takes here, I thought the position was really, really unpleasant, and I didn't see how to hold it. And according to the engine, I was correct in that decision, but it might have been more practical to go for that. But I went for knight d3, and the threat is, for example, if my opponent does like nothing. Okay, well that's technically not nothing. So if my opponent actually does nothing, the threat is to go knight takes here, and after here we have this fork with rook e5. And the other threat is to go knight e5, and then in which case we're threatening here, and we're threatening to go knight c4 with tempo. And we don't have to commit to b3, which would be nice. So instead of that, my opponent goes f6, stopping both the threats. Now if I go knight takes here, rook e5 would just result in losing a rook. So I'm bishop f4, looking to trade. My opponent went with bishop f8. I went for b3. And now I'm looking for knight b2, knight c4, g5. I have to go back. Bishop d6. Obviously now they got the bishop on the square they wanted. And yeah, just important to note why they moved this rook. If they moved the other rook, I'm sure they were afraid of this bishop a5 move, in which case they would have to trade this. And at this point, I'm sure that I could hold this against him. This position is just completely drawn after something like king d2. I don't see how someone can claim black has any advantage here. Engine saying like minus 0.5, but okay, we shouldn't look at the engine too much. That's another thing my opponent said in their analysis, which is 100% true. But yeah, again, my excuse for all these things is that I haven't played in a while, but we'll get to that later. Okay, bishop c7, bishop a5, bishop b8. Here I took and went rook e8, and my opponent doesn't want to trade, so they go here. Now I go knight d2, threatening knight e4 with this fork. So they only have one move, they have to go f5, and now I go back. And a lot of people were confused at this, but this is what the best plan is. We're basically just forcing them to go forward, because I thought that I would be getting into a drawn endgame after takes, bishop d2. Here they took. I went rook h1. And the only move basically that I saw from here, basically I thought this was all like not good for black, because I thought the resulting endgame was a draw, and it was. But okay, we'll see what happened. So rook h1. And yeah, here I was only really thinking about bishop c7 or bishop anywhere back. Bishop c7 makes the most sense because you dominate the knight. And here I thought after rook takes h5, I thought I had an easy draw. And I thought even I could be pushing for this position, because after something like rook g8, takes, I thought I'd be up a pawn. So I didn't think he'd go for rook g8. I thought he'd go for rook f8. And after takes, I thought he'd just take here. And okay, it's just a draw. So instead of that, he went for bishop takes c4, which looked impossible to me, because after rook takes h2, bishop f7, bishop takes g5, we're in an opposite colored bishop endgame where your pawns are fixed on dark squares. So I thought that in this position, it's an easy draw. And boy, was I wrong about that. My opponent definitely made me fight for the draw. So here, my opponent went king d7. And yeah, here, it's really kind of unexcusable what I did in 2 moves here, because my next 2 moves are the best moves. I played rook d2, king e6, and then c3. Yeah, these are both good moves. I mean, you can do nothing here, really. You can also go for this move b4, I think, which maybe even equalizes easier. After takes, this pawn is hanging, and if they defend it like this, you can go for here. And yeah, this should be a pretty easy draw. For example, after this, I could even go rook e4, I think, and that would force a draw. And otherwise, how do they defend this pawn? They can't really. If they go here, I can again still keep this here, and okay, they have to go here. So yeah, that would have been an easy way for the draw, b4. Now I didn't see that. Excuse me. So instead, I played the move c3, which is also a good move. Opponent played king f5. And at this point, I don't know what happened over to me. I played my next move in about 30 seconds, which is a huge blunder. And yeah, I was just thinking it was an easy draw. Nerves got to me. When you're playing a GM, I mean, this is my first time playing a GM over the board. You're bound to get pretty excited. And even when I'm online against like GM level players that have beaten online, you get really excited when you're in a winning position, or you're going to get a result that's good for you. Over the board, obviously, beating a GM is very tough, but even this draw I thought would be an amazing result for me. So here, obviously, the easiest way to draw this is with bishop h4. And yeah, I didn't calculate this move. I played f4 without really looking at much moves, but after rook h1, it makes a lot of sense. Bishop f2, and I don't really see how they make any progress. So for example, let's say they take. Here, this pawn is hanging, so they have to deal with that somehow. So I thought the most natural way would go c4. After take, to go rook c1, and takes here. And here, I thought after rook d4, this position was clearly drawn. And I was just looking at this position by myself after the game, because I wanted to see if I could look at some things without the engine. And I also watched my opponent's analysis, and yeah, I do definitely rely on the engine too much, because I'm used to playing online. So yeah, I just calculated that was an easy draw. But yeah, it's hard to say things are an easy draw in hindsight when, okay, a 2100 player played f4, which is a terrible move. And yeah, looking back at your games, like when you lost them, it's so hard because you realize how badly you played. I really made a ton of mistakes to lose this game. It should have been an easy draw, but okay, king e4. And now here I went for b4, which is an inexcusable blunder. I played that in like 3 minutes or something. And here, what I should have done according to the engine is go takes, and bishop h4. Yeah, even this line is still really hard for a human to see, because, okay, usually you want to do something. You don't want to just fight for the draw, but yeah, I just completely missed that my opponent had this. And after c takes b4, I didn't input the rest of this game, which I think was pretty clinical by my opponent here. I think after c takes b4, let me just find that move. So bishop takes g5. See, the game didn't end too long from here. So here I played this bishop d8 move, stopping a5. My opponent played rook d3, which is a very nice move. And I think this endgame, as calculated by my opponent, is probably just winning. Now, whether this is table base or not, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's not table base. I think table base is 8 nowadays. After f5, I definitely could have continued fighting. For example, my opponent was going to go here. And after something like, okay, I don't really have to do much here. a5, whatever, a4. I think it's just dead loss. But, okay, I made it pretty easy. After rook d3, takes, I played the move bishop a5, and after h4, yeah, that just doesn't make any sense. I went here, 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 and yeah, here my opponent played a really nice move, bishop takes h2. That is just a really stylish move to finish off the game. And after king h2, king xa2, I thought, okay, I might as well let him show the idea after here. And here, oh yeah, if you were wondering why because I am promoting at the same time as him, which is what I calculated. At first I was happy because I thought my opponent missed this, but then I realized queen b3 was mate. So, okay, at this point I was like, okay, I'm just dead lost. Bishop a5 with a little bit of silly move. I completely missed h4. But okay, that was the end of the game. Definitely my opponent played an amazing game and put a lot of pressure on me. I feel like my opponent definitely gave me a lot of chances to draw that game. I feel like that game was definitely in my reach, but okay, bad endgame play along with some being afraid of my opponent in the opening led to me losing. So I can't be really mad at that game. That kind of stuff happens. But now let's look at basically a little bit of drama that happened after the game. So while I was watching, I just pulled up the Twitch clip here. While I was watching Aman's analysis of my game, or our game, I came across this clip, which I realized that, yeah, I was just completely in the wrong here. I'll just give you guys a second to watch it without saying much.
It's the etiquette. So it was me taking the knight on d5 and him taking back too quickly. Well, you can see what I did, right? Obviously, I didn't press the clock on purpose. I haven't pressed the clock yet. I've already made your move. We have an issue. It's like he's already touching the piece. Right, so he's already got his piece in his hand, moving it, and I'm not even done. I'm not even completed my move. Not even close. I'm like halfway done.
Hi, so the last part of the video got corrupted, but basically what I wanted to finish up on is, yeah, just make sure you know etiquette, especially from coming from online. I wasn't really remembering like what the real life atmosphere is like. I probably made some other etiquette nonsenses in the other games. And yeah, just make sure that, okay, when you make a move, wait till your opponent's finished. You can't pre-move real life. And yeah, finally, I mean, keep in mind, like, etiquette isn't the most important thing. Everyone messes it up and everyone is still learning and about these sort of things. And yeah, definitely a great game from Aman, and I will see you guys in the next video.